So today's video is, well, the purpose of it is to inspire and kind of inform what's possible. You don't just have to make a living putting plywood or melamine, composite, MDF boxes together, installing just trim. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a whole other level of just solid wood. Now, I own a sawmill, and you don't have to have a sawmill. You can absolutely just purchase online or a neighborhood supplier live edge material of all sorts of different species. Could be domestic, it might be some species from Africa, all over the world. Luckily for me, I own a sawmill. I have a lot of stock out back behind my shop, and most of it is just red oak and walnut. And there's some pieces that I just put together. They don't have to be gigantic, long, or wide, or thick. So I have a lot of fun with it. Not just fun, but it's challenging. I hone my skills. I test myself just to see what's possible. What can I pull off? Let's get into what exactly I'm doing on these projects. I'm just going to showcase a couple of projects here. This is a 100% live edge cabinet. All of the pieces are live edge red oak. A buddy of mine needed a cabinet above the toilet, so he just gave me free rein. He just said, build me something. And I could put vitamins and towels and toiletries in. So this is what we came up with. And it was just, again, just scrap red oak. Actually, there's that saw blade there on the drawer face is actually just a piece from an old saw blade from my sawmill. This cabinet has a pretty nice finish on it. It's a catalyzed sprayable polyurethane. The finish I use is from Italy. It's called ICA. I think Sherwin-Williams bought out ICA. So this is just a floating shelf. I experimented with a grinder on the very front leading edge, the live edge, and I somewhat like the results. This is actually in my blacksmith shop behind my cabinet shop at home. And I started getting into some windowsills. That was just a scrap piece of walnut there. So the same buddy, he said, "Hey man, you want to do my windowsills? I think that's kind of a cool idea." So these are all red oak, not hard to do at all. Pretty simple stuff. I'm not quite sure why I have so many pictures of this particular one. I do like it. It fits well. It not hard to pull off at all. I mean, we did all of these windowsills in like a day. Actually, in that same room, he wanted a floating shelf. This is 16 foot long. These are book matched pieces, one right on top of the next. And I just opened a book, and there are the two pieces right there. So he wanted a feature wall to kind of have some taxidermies and just collectible stuff. And so I went out and I got a bunch of barnwood, and I said, go ahead and paint some earth tones on the back wall. So when you see through the cracks and such, I cannot believe that he painted the wall like that, but it was pretty funny. So this is the finished product. He's got obviously he's an avid hunter, and he's an electrician. So there's actually outlets inside that shelf. That's a table I did a while back. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So how is that shelf floating? Well, I machined in the ends, and there's just slots, and then I just inserted I fastened to the wall a piece of angle iron, and each end just slid right on there. It wasn't that easy. They don't just slide right on there. It took a little bit of finesse, a little bit of quite a bit of measuring, and I wanted everything to turn out nice. Obviously, that bottom part that's got the railroad spikes in it, that supports the majority of the weight. The seam came together pretty nice. I put biscuit joints in there. I'm a big fan of biscuit joinery. And of course, I finished it all in the catalyzed polyurethane. And I think it turned out pretty stellar. And he loves it. I mean, it totally transformed that space. So this is the table that's sitting in that same room. These are the pieces, just scrap pieces out in the back. And I wanted to play around with epoxy. And I probably built this table probably 3 different times. I just couldn't figure out a cool way to support the live edge, the oak piece. And so I finally, landed on a concept, and this is what I came up with. I'm really proud of it, but I actually didn't have a place to put it. So there was that rotted void there. So what I did is I bought a bunch of these red tiger eye stones, and I filled that in that rotted section. And see it? There's an oak leaf. And that oak leaf was kind of covering up a screw up I had. For whatever reason, when you get to the bottom portion of the jug of epoxy, there's a lot of air in the jug. So I think that's what happens. There's a lot of air in the jug, and it leads to, some fogging and little micro bubbles. And of course you can, you're supposed to make those disappear with a heat gun or a torch. They just wouldn't go away, and I was in trouble. And really quick, I just thought, what if I just threw a leaf in there? And it was just a poetic part of this little build. The leaf fits in there. It looks great. When I got all done with this, it was quite a science project. I had messed around with this forever, just in my spare time, just learning this bottom shelf here. It was just a piece of walnut, and there's a border that goes all around that piece of walnut. I think that walnut is just plywood. It's just a plywood piece of walnut, but I wrapped it in solid, and I failed, and I think this happens later in the video. Yeah, those are just wood skewers, which is, you just drill them in, add some wood glue, and I just wanted just a little bit of exposed joinery there. So I think this bottom part I did not spray in a catalyzed polyurethane. I think everything here is either epoxy or regular run-of-the-mill polyurethane out of the can. Anyway, I got done with this project, and I didn't have a place for it in my house. I just wanted to do it, but I was so sick of this thing. And I posted online, just kind of telling a story like I am now. And I said, I'm actually pretty sick of this piece. It needs to go away. So my buddy said, yeah, you could just bring that over. That'd be great. So turns out he likes it. And it's been at his place for the last 4 or 5 years. And of course, he's got his pistol mounted to the bottom of that. He's just kind of like that. So this next project, a different customer, different friend, he just fell in love with aromatic cedar, and he wanted a big, beefy, floating vanity top in his bathroom. This is kind of how I went with mounting this vanity to the wall. Big, heavy vanity with a sink in it, of course. And so I cut a couple holes in the wall. Of course, I found a water pipe, so that was a surprise, and I'm glad I didn't penetrate it. And so that piece of plywood that I mount in there, and I glue it and fasten it, and then that enables me to have just a chunk of wood. And that chunk of wood is going to correspond with some slots, and you'll see here in a little bit. There's some slots in each end of the slab that I put there. Now, this is the trick. That's a stair tread little gadget. And what I do is I mount a piece of wood and I scribe that to the wall. And then I take that, lay that on top of the vanity top and machine it so it's gonna be perfect. And then I built this little sled so I can machine and router out the space with a corresponding mounting block on each side on each wall. And then, of course, like to seal that in polyurethane just so if water got back there, it couldn't get underneath the epoxy and the finish and so forth. So this is how it turned out. I couldn't be happier with this. I mean, what a cool look. Didn't go tight against the wall. We left live edge on the front and the back, and it fit like a glove. So there was a little shelf hanging with the rustic pipes. You can buy a little kit. There's a hand hammered copper. I think that's copper. It's a little copper sink. So really, I walked away with this feeling really accomplished. This was another vanity top on one of a double sink, and I believe this is the one that I showcased earlier with the epoxy. And this is, man, lots of epoxy. There's probably a 1/4 inch. I believe that's the shelf that went under that. That's another. So there was another vanity also. There it is. And I had to cover up radiant heat and other mechanical aspects. This next project was a really heavily figured piece of curly maple that I actually bought from a live edge source here locally in southeastern Detroit called Tree Purposed. Turned out fantastic. Kind of feel like I'm rushing through these a little bit for the sake of time and interest. But these are two pieces that are red oak, and I was experimenting with, these were live jobs, but I was experimenting with a finish technique called ceruse. And because of that technique, I'm able to turn red oak like a silvery grayish tone, which isn't very easy unless you use this technique. I highly suggest and recommend looking that up because it can make your work turn out really, really cool.